So electrical, this is something that can get really time consuming in a bathroom renovation, especially if you don't do the due diligence to find out what is existing. If you're in an older home, be careful of the old wiring. Sometimes there's knob and tube, BX cable, which is like the metal braided lines. Those are something that you just don't want to touch or certainly don't want to add on to. So you really have to kind of investigate what's existing in the bathroom before you can give a quote for an electrical bid on something like this. In this video, that's what I'm going to go through is a whole bunch of things to think about and time consuming things that it will take to be able to do it in a normal configuration for a bathroom. Now be aware, most places in the United States anyways require you have to be a licensed contractor to be hired to do this. But if you're a homeowner, a lot of times you can get your own permits, get your own inspections, and be able to do it. So just be aware that if you're being hired out to do this, there's a lot of big consequences to doing it. But I want to go through kind of what I normally do in a normal bathroom. This is a 5x9 bathroom, but we're going to have some pretty cool features in this one. We're going to have some electric floor heating. We're also going to have a bidet heated seat, which is definitely going to be nice. And then just a kind of normal configuration I do for my wiring. So let's get to it. So first off, like I was mentioning, you really have to investigate what's existing. When you're evaluating a bathroom, especially in an old home, during the time that you go into someone's home and take a look at it to be able to devise a plan, you want to take off the covers of your switches, see what kind of wiring is behind there. Hopefully you have some new Romex type of wires in there. If you don't, you might have some metal BX cable, which is pretty old. I think that was mostly in the 80s and before that they would install that. These things have cloth wire around it that gets really brittle, and it can, when you kind of basically touch it, it kind of falls apart, and it's really easy to, have, electrical grounding issues with that. So I really advise not touching any of that stuff and just replacing it for the most part. In most bathrooms, or especially if you're going to gut everything and you're going to remove all the plaster, you're going to remove everything, it's not a real huge challenge to run a new wire down to your breaker panel and just get rid of everything in the existing bathroom. So what I like to do is, in most of my configurations, is have a 3-switch gang box. So 1 switch for overhead of the shower, 1 switch for the vent fan, and then 1 switch for the vanity lighting. I think 3 makes the most sense. It also gives you the opportunity for, like, the vent fan, you can install a sensor switch or a timer switch, and then you could also add, obviously, dimming switches to all of the lighting circuits. But having those 3 really kind of makes the lighting and the vent fan work pretty cohesively. Now, as far as location, obviously you just don't want it to be behind a door when you walk in. You kind of want it in the most convenient place that people are going to be able to use it. And I recommend in older homes kind of reference what the rest of the home is set at. Most of the time new homes are about 52 inches off the floor. A lot of older homes were lower, and I would recommend just matching what's in the rest of the home so that everything's kind of equal and normal to it. But you also have to pay attention if you're doing a wainscoting. You want to make sure this is high enough where you're not going to have to cut out the wainscoting and have issues there. So it really depends on the design of your bathroom. But location, normally, is just right when you come in the door. You want to be able to turn on your switches. So right now we have an existing 2 gang box here. So we're going to remove this, and we're going to get some lighting circuits run to here. All right, so this was basically an existing vanity light vent fan. So this is one great thing about having these Wago clips. You can just take everything out pretty easily. Okay, so that's the hot one. Okay, so this is our hot supply here. Keep it all there. So one thing I want to mention is if you're going to plan to put timer switches in, or even a dim switch, they're pretty bulky. So I recommend getting the larger boxes. So this is just a normal plastic one. I think this is 44. So this is a 44 cubic inch box. This is a 56 inch cubic box. So you can see how much bigger it is. That gives you a lot more room in here when you have a whole bunch of wires. So whether, like I said, if you're using a dim switch or a timer switch, those things get pretty bulky. So I would definitely recommend getting the bigger boxes. We don't have a wainscoting on this one, so we don't have to be concerned about height. So we're just going to go like a normal height, which is about 52 inches to the bottom of the box. And I should mention, just make sure that these tabs here, that accounts for 1/2 inch drywall so that you're out far enough. So, and a 15 amp line is sufficient for most bathrooms. So pay attention to the gauge of wire. This is a 14-2. So if you had an existing 12-2, you want to match everything. You don't want to go down and gauge wire. So a lot of times old bathrooms, they're just running 12 gauge wire, 20 amp wire. If that's the case, you want to just run all 20 amp. But in this case, we have our new Romex here. Lighting for above our mirror. There we go. So this guy will be out of here because we're going to have 2 independent lights that come down. So this is not going to be the configuration that we use. Loose in the wall or up in the ceiling here, because what I plan to do is just grab the wire once I establish where my mirror and everything's going to be. I'm going to want to basically cut the holes from my sconces. So I don't know where that's at because I don't have the mirror and I don't have the sconces yet, so that's going to be played around. So we'll just keep this up here and I'll be able to just grab that after I cut the hole. The other thing that I am having is a lighted mirror. So we're going to run another line that's going to just run off the power supply. So it's a dedicated power, or not dedicated, but it's going to be a power supply to the vanity light, which is going to have its own switch on the vanity medicine cabinet. So this is going to be under cabinet lighting. So just do so this one's just going to hang out here as well because I don't know exactly where that needs to be connected on that cabinet. So there's basically a lot of loose wires that you kind of keep behind the drywall to be able to grab. It's not a bad idea to take a picture of these things too so that you know what needs to be done. But this is a pretty open concept area. I have all this attic space. It makes it pretty easy. Okay, so maybe it's just straight dedicated power for that. I usually just make a black line, knowing that I have to connect it to my main power supply here. We're going to use a 4-inch retrofit style recessed light, which is my favorite because it's the easiest way to go, because you just leave the wire up there, cut the hole, and add the light. Pretty easy to grab, so I'll just tuck this up here, cut the hole, and be able to grab that wire. There's a 1-hole strap on this. Just want to keep these nice and away from the drywall. That's nice. Okay. All right, so we have 6 wires here. This is another reason you really want these bigger boxes. So just a brief overview here. We got our power supply. So this is a dedicated 15 amp circuit. It goes all the way down to the breaker box. And then we have our under cabinet lighting. We have our overhead lighting for the vanity. And then we also have a power supply for the lighted mirror. So we have a mirror cabinet that we're gonna have a lighted feature to it. You got the vent fan, and then you have our shower light. So all these will definitely keep you nicely lit in this bathroom. And again, having these bigger boxes really help out, because if you have a dim switch or a timer switch like we're going to be putting on here, it's going to give us plenty of room to be able to tuck all these in and make it easy to install. Okay, so for your GFIs, you always want to have a 20 amp wire So that's this 12-2 gauge wire. And we're gonna have the GFI dedicated circuit down to the main panel, but we're also gonna bring over and connect for our bidet toilet seat. So the bidet is stating 1250 watts. The 20 amp wire can handle about 2400 watts within safety. So 80% of that, what is that, 2200 watts or so. So you'll have 1000 watts in addition to the bidet toilet seat when the actual seat is warming. So all that being said is that we're gonna run a dedicated circuit for the GFI and run it and connect it for the bidet seat. When it comes to location of your GFI, it just has to be within 3 feet, and it can't be 12 inches. It has to be above 12 inches from the top of your flood rim of your sink. So just don't let it go 12 inches below your sink top, and then you have to be within 3 feet, which that usually works out pretty well for most people. So we're gonna have a 30-inch vanity. So basically we're gonna just kind of keep the plumbing as where our center mark is. So that's about there, 30. Now, if you wanna have it above the vanity area, you know, above the sink area, then I would go 42 inches. That's a typical height that you would have your outlet. So from the bottom of the outlet, that gives you plenty enough room. It's about 6 inches above the top of your sink area. Now you can adjust that to whatever it is that your vanity height is and what you're wanting at. Now we're going to be doing a floating sink. So if you really wanted to have a higher sink and wanted to make it 38 inches, you can. That's real all personal preference. But I personally don't like my outlets above vanity itself. I like to have them off to the side and below. I don't personally like seeing them coming in, and I don't like all my cords plugging in above the sink cup. I just think it looks kind of junky, and I prefer to have it outside of it. So we're gonna go, so we got 15 to the edge of our cabinet. So we're gonna go another like 4 inches, and then we're gonna bring this up. So we're gonna make our vanity kind of a normal height of 36 inches. So we're just gonna keep our outlet at 36 inches and below. Actually, I might just make it 35 so it's kind of hidden, so you don't see it. So it'll be, you'll see your vanity top, and the outlet will be right next to it. All right, so same thing here. They have bigger boxes here. So GFIs are very bulky. So I would recommend getting the bigger boxes. This is the 18 cubic inch, and this is 23 cubic inches. So you get a lot more space out of this. I definitely recommend that, especially if you're running 2 wires like we are, to go over the bidet toilet seats. We're gonna bring this guy up to the bidet. So now we got our bidet wire. We're gonna run that. We're gonna measure that out a little bit later. We're gonna get the lighting circuit on in here first. Now, as far as the heated flooring, you know, you just want to have it in a space that the thermostat is accessible and easy to control and be able to use. So we're just gonna put it probably straight onto this wall here. Okay, so for heated wiring setup, it's really nice to have a 4-gang box like this and then use a mud ring to make it a single fixture unit. So you can see it has a mud ring. This is just going to be for a single device, but it has all that room in there for all the extra wires. Romex connector. And then I have a laser matching up with my switches. So you just want to make sure that things are even so that things look nice. So this is a 1/2 inch adapter. I'm going to set that in here. Okay, so we'll just measure down. 48 inches. Let's go ahead and glue our fittings here. Once we get the drywall on, we'll cut that and then we'll be able to fish our wires up to it. Now keep in mind, some manufacturers for heated flooring require you to have a separate conduit for the floor sensor heater cable. But in this instance, this one allows you to have them, all the wires all in the same one. So a 1/2 inch conduit, totally sufficient. But if you had a system that required the separate one for the floor sensor, you want to put another piece of conduit down and run that separately. So, but this is really the easiest way to get a setup for your heated flooring. Now you have plenty of room and you can just rough that in later on. Okay, so that's 19 and a half. Okay, so for the outlet for your bidet, you really want to be going by the specifications of the manufacturer on this particular model. So going from the center is 13 3/4. So that's where you want the center of your outlet. And it's going to be on the left side because that's where you're going to make the connection. So you have your wire here and here. So, and then you want to be 19 3/4 off the floor to the bottom of the outlet. So it sits up pretty high. And again, for GFIs, now we're going to be running this off a GFI. So a smaller box like this would work, but I highly recommend you get the bigger box if you're going to be putting a GFI in. We're just going to go ahead and use the bigger box just because we have it. Okay, so again, basically 13 3/4 to the center, and then 19 3/4 off the bottom of our box, or off the floor, I'm sorry, 19 3/4 off the floor. So that'll give us the right height, be able to plug it in and be in good shape. Now, obviously, having new construction like this makes this very, very simple. And I know nowadays, everyone is getting these added next to the toilet, just in case they do want to put one of these in, because it's much more troublesome later on adding a wire. Basically, you have to fish things through the attic or be able to cut open the drywall to be able to run that wire. But just know that really most of the time you can just go off of your GFI and connect it and then have a power source for your bidet. All right, so now we're going to take our dedicated circuits that we added here for our heated flooring and our GFI outlet and add them to the panel. Now I do want to mention that this can really cause a lot of trouble for you if you don't inspect the exact panel that you're installing into, making sure that it's not overloaded with circuits, and then making sure that there isn't really bad wiring. I've definitely opened up some old panels that I didn't even want to touch. I ended up getting my brother electrician to come in and fix things because it could be a mess. So just be aware that if you're doing an estimate for a bathroom, you need to check out the panel, see what the kind of wiring is in there, and see what it's going to take to be able to add these circuits. You can't just assume that you're going to have the room and the ability to do this. So let's take this off. Now this is my garage, and I know that I have this place overwired, and I have a lot of dedicated circuits that are really not necessarily needed to be dedicated. So I'm going to size down a couple of these areas here. Okay, so as you can see here, I'm pretty well packed here. All these breakers are pretty much full. So I'm going to simply just wire net a couple of these together so that I have some additional space to run these wires. Okay, so this is a sub panel, so we're going to bring all our grinds over to one side. two neutrals come down, go into the neutral bus. GFI. Okay, so this will be GFI. This will be the heated flooring. Got our neutrals in our own separate buses here. Got our grounds over on the ground bus on the other side. So we're good to go. And again, we just have these connections kind of daisy chaining some of these other outlets that we have. So enough room to be able to add these two circuits. So we should be good to go. And then just to show you real quick, got this sub panel inspected last year. So as a homeowner, you can do all this work, have a third-party inspector come out and inspect it. And in most places, you should be able to do that. So now, technically, I should have all this inspected again, just because I added these two new circuits. But just know that you can do this legally as a homeowner and be able to save yourself a ton of money. All right, so that wraps up the rough-in electrical. Now we do still have a lot of wires that are kind of just loosely put behind the wall, and when we do the drywall and we know exactly where our fixtures are going to be, we'll cut in and be able to easily do that. Now, when you cut down a bathroom down to this level where everything's exposed, it really makes electrical very, very easy to do. And that's where you definitely want to be adding those additional outlets for future things. But I just wanted to go over the business aspect of it, trying to evaluate what it's going to take. Now, there's two components that I think you really have to pay attention to, and that's the age of the home. If you're built before the 1930s, it's actually fairly easy to run a wire down to the main panel because it used to be balloon framing that went from all the way down front of the first floor all the way up to the attic space. So it's usually a clear path all the way down, and you can just take a fish stick and just run that wire down. It's usually pretty simple, especially when the most basements are unfinished back in the day. So it was really easy to run a wire. Now, when you get into the 80s, 90s, and then obviously in the 2000s, it gets much more difficult because they introduced foam spray insulation, which isn't easy to get through. They would make sure that there's fire blocking foam around any hole, any area. Even like one place that I'd always go to run a wire is right along the main waste stack, because you could pretty much guarantee for the most part this was a nice straight run down to the basement. But nowadays, at least in the 2010s, they really kind of made sure that you foam around it, and it's really kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. So that is where where you're going to take your time is running new dedicated circuits. And then again, you really want to pay attention to your service panel. Make sure that there's enough room before you even commit to doing something like this. And then obviously hiring a professional would definitely take it out of your hands. Just know that it really does end up increasing the cost quite a bit. And then the timing of having to, you gutting the bathroom and having that professional come in here and do the electrical might not take them very long, but it's going to basically hold up the job to get it complete. So let me know your thoughts, how you go about evaluating electrical work and what it's going to take. I'd love to hear your comments on it, but just to know, in my area, I'm roughly, I still just kind of go by the day. So it's $1,000 a day. So my rough-in, typically I try to incorporate it for about $1,000 for that rough-in electrical. Now that all depends on, the situation of being able to get it. I've spent some days that I spent the entire day just running one wire, and then I had drywall work I had to, to fix to get the wire there. So thanks again. I'll see you in the next video. Yeah, there definitely isn't enough room here. Yeah, and they got, like I said, they got double wires and breakers. This is just all bad. All right, we're done. We're done for now, I guess. Get my brother in here to change this out.